A Utah community is devastated after a gruesome discovery in Las Vegas over the weekend. Authorities say a Utah mother and daughter were found dead in a hotel room in what they're calling a murder-suicide.
February 15th, 2026 began like any other competition morning in Las Vegas. Inside the Rio Hotel and Casino, the halls were already filling with young athletes, coaches, and families preparing for another day of competitive cheerleading. Hundreds of cheerleaders had traveled from across the region to compete that weekend. Music echoed faintly through ballrooms as teams warmed up and rehearsed routines one more time before stepping onto the mat. But one team quickly noticed something was wrong. Two people who should have been there were missing. An 11-year-old cheerleader and her mother, who had competed the day before, had not arrived for the second day of the competition. At first, it seemed like a simple delay. Maybe they overslept. Maybe traffic inside the massive hotel complex slowed them down. Coaches tried calling. Teammates sent messages. No answer. Text messages continued to pile up, each one marked unread. As the morning moved forward, concern quietly began to spread through the team. By early afternoon, that concern turned into fear. At approximately 2:30 p.m., hotel security at the Rio Hotel and Casino used a master key to open the door to the room where the mother and daughter were staying. Inside, they discovered something that would instantly transform a missing person's concern into a tragedy. This is the story of Tanya McGeehan and Addie Smith, a case that stunned the cheer community and raised painful questions about the hidden toll of prolonged family conflict. Addie Smith was 11 years old. She lived in West Jordan, Utah, with her mother, Tanya McGeehan. Like many children her age, Addie's life revolved around school, friends, and activities, but cheerleading had quickly become the center of her world. She trained with Utah Extreme Cheer, one of the state's competitive cheer programs, where athletes practiced demanding routines that required strength, timing, and precision. Before joining Utah Extreme Cheer, Addie had also trained with Utah Fusion All-Stars, another respected program in the region. Competitive cheerleading is not a casual activity. It requires long hours of training, weekend competitions, travel, and an enormous commitment from both the athletes and their families. For Addie, those hours were something she genuinely loved. Teammates remembered her as energetic and encouraging. Coaches described a young athlete who worked hard and showed real promise. On social media, photos showed a girl who appeared happy doing what she loved, posing with teammates, practicing stunts, and celebrating performances after competitions. Beyond cheerleading, Addie had also participated in the Utah Cinderella pageant, a youth pageant system that encourages confidence and performance skills. To those around her, she seemed like a bright and active child with a future full of possibilities. People who knew her often described the same things: a warm smile, a positive attitude, a girl who brought energy into every practice. Her mother, Tanya McGeehan, was 38 years old. Friends and acquaintances described her as deeply involved in her daughter's life. She drove Addie to practices, attended competitions, and frequently posted online about her daughter's accomplishments. Like many parents in youth athletics, she seemed committed to supporting her child's passion. To the cheer community, Tanya appeared to be a dedicated parent. But behind that public image was a much more complicated and difficult reality. For nearly a decade, Tanya had been involved in an intense and prolonged custody dispute with her ex-husband, Bradley Smith. The conflict began years earlier. In 2015, Tanya McGeehan and Bradley Smith finalized their divorce. At the time, Addie was still a baby. What followed was not a brief disagreement over parenting arrangements. Instead, the legal battle over custody would continue for 9 years, spanning nearly the entirety of Addie's childhood. From infancy through age 11, her parents remained locked in an ongoing legal conflict that repeatedly brought them back into court. Court records from the case suggest the level of tension between the parents was unusually high. Judges overseeing the custody arrangement implemented strict rules designed to minimize contact between the two adults. Those restrictions reveal just how strained the relationship had become. Custody exchanges, for example, were required to take place at Addie's school. But even there, the parents were not allowed to be near each other. The court ordered that their vehicles remain at least 5 parking spaces apart during exchanges. 5 spaces. Addie would walk between the vehicles by herself as the custody transfer occurred. No neutral escort. No direct interaction between the parents. Just an 11-year-old girl crossing a parking lot between 2 adults who were legally required to stay far away from one another. Another rule prohibited either parent from recording the custody exchanges. Restrictions like that typically appear when conflicts between parents escalate to the point where interactions are being documented in attempts to gather evidence against one another. Even school events required separation. Parent-teacher conferences, activities, and school functions came with strict instructions that the parents maintain distance. In some cases, they could not attend at the same time. Communication between them was also tightly controlled. Court orders required that most communication happen through email first. If disagreements continued, the next step was mediation rather than direct confrontation. All of these measures reflected the same underlying reality. The conflict between Addie's parents had become so intense that the court system had to create layers of separation simply to manage everyday parenting responsibilities. For years, this legal battle formed the background of Addie's life. Then came the weekend of February 14th, 2026, Valentine's Day. That morning, Tanya and Addie traveled from Utah to Las Vegas, Nevada, where Addie's team from Utah Extreme Cheer was scheduled to compete in a multi-day cheerleading event. Competitions like this are major events in the cheer world. Teams travel from different states, routines are judged across multiple days, and athletes often spend months preparing for just a few minutes on the competition floor. The first day of competition went smoothly. Addie performed with her team. Coaches saw nothing unusual. Teammates later said the day felt completely normal. That evening, around 8 p.m., someone saw Tanya and Addie inside their room at the Rio Hotel and Casino. That would become the last confirmed sighting of them alive. No one in neighboring rooms reported hearing arguments. No shouting, no disturbances, just silence behind the hotel walls. At some point between late Saturday night and early Sunday morning, investigators believe the tragedy occurred. According to the evidence later released by police, Tanya McGeehan shot her daughter, Addie Smith, inside the hotel room. Afterward, she turned the gun on herself. Sunday morning arrived with no indication of what had happened. At the competition venue, the Utah Extreme Cheer team gathered for day 2 of the event. Athletes stretched. Coaches reviewed routines. Music played as teams prepared for their performances. Then someone noticed that Addie was missing. At first, it seemed unusual but not alarming. Maybe they were running late. But as minutes passed, the concern grew. Addie never missed competitions, and Tanya never missed watching her perform. Calls were placed, text messages sent. Still nothing. Soon the team began reaching out publicly, posting on social media in hopes that someone had seen them. The message reflected growing fear. This is not the post we ever wanted to make, but we need the cheer community's help. One of our athletes and her mom are currently missing from Las Vegas. They did not arrive to competition today, and we have been unable to contact them. At this point, we are extremely worried. Police have been contacted. At 10:45 a.m., the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department received a request for a welfare check. Officers were dispatched to the Rio Hotel and Casino. They knocked on the door of the room registered to Tanya McGeehan. No response. They called the room phone. Still nothing. Officers checked the door and surrounding area for signs of forced entry. There were none. The door appeared secure. The windows showed no signs of tampering. With no clear indication of immediate danger, officers cleared the call and notified hotel security. But the concern didn't fade. More calls came in. Family members, friends, other parents from the cheer team, everyone repeating the same thing. Something wasn't right. Eventually, officers returned to the hotel. At 2:30 p.m., hotel security used a master key to open the room. Inside, investigators found Tanya McGeehan and Addie Smith. Both had died from gunshot wounds. A single firearm was recovered at the scene. The evidence indicated a murder-suicide. Addie Smith had been shot first. Then Tanya McGeehan had taken her own life. Soon afterward, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Lieutenant Robert Price confirmed the basic facts of the case during a press briefing. Investigators also revealed that a note had been found in the room, though its contents were not made public. Police did not disclose whether the note referenced the custody dispute or any specific events leading up to the tragedy. The details of that message remain sealed. Their vehicle was still parked in the hotel lot. There were no signs that anyone else had entered the room. No forced entry. No reports of arguments or disturbances from neighboring guests. From every outward perspective, the weekend had appeared normal. But behind the closed door of that hotel room, something had changed. And to understand how the situation reached that point, investigators, and those who followed the case, would have to look back at nearly a decade of conflict that had shaped the lives of everyone involved. As the custody battle between Tanya McGeehan and Bradley Smith stretched on for years, the court system eventually reached a point where direct communication between them was no longer considered workable. Face-to-face conversations were effectively off the table. Judges overseeing the case implemented layers of restrictions designed to keep the parents separated as much as possible. Even everyday decisions about Addie's life became difficult. When the two adults could not agree, the court sometimes shifted decision-making authority away from them entirely. In certain situations, professionals involved in Addie's life, teachers, medical providers, and therapists, were given increased influence over decisions about her care and well-being. These types of arrangements are unusual. They typically appear only when the level of conflict between parents becomes so severe that cooperation breaks down completely. Yet despite the intensity of the legal dispute, something about Addie's life seemed to contradict the idea that she was growing up in constant turmoil. According to court records and reporting from 2024, Tanya McGeehan maintained primary control over Addie's daily life, even while the legal conflict continued. And outwardly, Addie appeared to be thriving. Her cheer coaches consistently described her as enthusiastic and motivated. She arrived at practices smiling, ready to train, focused on improving her routines.
Especially when you consider what police say happened. The young girl was identified as Addie Smith. She was only 11 years old. Her mother, Tanya McGeehan, was in her 30s, according to police, and they were in Vegas for Smith's cheer competition, and at first, everything seemed to be going fine.
She showed up for practice round, did great. Everything seemed normal.
The next day, it was anything but normal. 11-year-old Addie Smith, an avid cheerleader, was getting ready to show off her skills at a cheer competition in Las Vegas on Sunday, but her team noticed she didn't show up.
They had a very early call time to get to the event, and she was nowhere to be found. So we called, sent messages, and nobody was able to get a hold of her.
This missing poster started circulating on social media showing Smith and her mother, Tanya McGeehan. Parents and coaches called 911.
Officers arrived, met up with security, went up to the room and attempted to contact the mother and daughter in their room. They knocked several times and they called into the room without any answer.
After the welfare check, several additional 911 calls prompted hotel security to check on them again at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Smith and McGeehan were found dead, police calling it a murder-suicide.
This is a sad and tragic incident, and our hearts go out to the family.
As authorities investigate this tragedy, ABC4 spoke to those who knew Smith. Corey Uteki, a gym owner who oversaw Smith's development, says she had a positive impact on her peers.
What I know of Addie was that she was an extremely hard worker who always did what she was asked without complaining. She was kind of the hype man on the team. She was always the person to get up there and get the kids pumped up.
Smith's former coach, Emily Morgan, sharing the same sentiment.
I will never forget the smile on her face or the look on her face when she was able to accomplish something that she had set a goal to accomplish. She was everybody's friend. She was a light in our gym.
Tonight, the Salem, Utah Police Department posting on Facebook identifying Smith as the niece of Salem Police Sergeant Smith. The post read in part, "It is with profound sadness and heavy hearts that we share news of a tragedy affecting one of our own. While the details of this loss are difficult to process, we are coming together as a department to support Sergeant Smith and his family during this unimaginable time."
It's really hard. It was any kid that I get to work with, it is an honor for me, and for Addie especially, it was a privilege to be a part of her life and to be able to love her and guide her. And, you know, she taught me so much as well.
6 p.m., Addie Smith's friends and cheer teammates will be honoring her life at the Utah Fusion All-Stars Gym in South Jordan. ABC4's Mackenzie Diaz will show us how they are celebrating her life later on tonight. But in the meantime, Las Vegas police say that McGeehan left a note in the hotel room, but they did not share what it said. Live in studio, I'm Bayan Wang, ABC4 News.
Other parents involved in the program said she appeared engaged with her teammates and committed to the sport. She was progressing through increasingly competitive levels of cheerleading. She traveled to competitions. She built friendships with other athletes. From the outside, she looked like a young girl fully immersed in the activity she loved. But that contrast raises a difficult question. If the custody situation was truly as hostile as the court records suggest, where was the stress showing up? Was it visible to the adults around her? Or was Addie carrying that weight quietly? At 11 years old, roughly 6th grade for most children, kids are already capable of understanding far more than adults sometimes assume. Old enough to notice tension. Old enough to recognize when their parents cannot stand to be near each other. Old enough to realize they are standing in the middle of a conflict they did not create. For nearly her entire life, Addie had grown up in the shadow of a legal battle between the two people who were supposed to protect her most. Children in those situations often learn to adapt in subtle ways. They become skilled at hiding stress, especially when they feel responsible for maintaining peace around them. They learn how to appear cheerful, how to perform normalcy, even when their home life feels complicated or unstable. For Addie, cheerleading may have been exactly that. A space where the conflict at home temporarily disappeared. A place where routines, teammates, and competitions provided structure and distraction. A place where she could simply be a kid. But on the weekend of February 14th, 2026, even that safe space could not protect her. Investigators later tried to reconstruct the final hours leading up to the tragedy. Certain points in the timeline are known with reasonable certainty. On Saturday, February 14th, Tanya and Addie attended the first day of the cheer competition in Las Vegas. Addie performed with her team as scheduled. There were no reported conflicts that day. No arguments at the venue. No visible signs of distress. Everything appeared routine. Later that evening, around 8 p.m., the two were seen at their hotel room inside the Rio Hotel and Casino. After that moment, the timeline becomes less clear. Sometime between Saturday night and Sunday morning, the shooting occurred. Investigators were left with a difficult question. What happened inside that hotel room during those hours? Did something occur suddenly? Was there a phone call or message that changed the situation? Did a conversation take place between mother and daughter that escalated in ways no one could see? Or had the decision already been made long before they arrived in Las Vegas? One possibility investigators considered was that Tanya had planned the act in advance. If that were the case, it would mean she had watched her daughter compete earlier that day, knowing that it might be the last time. But police did not publicly identify any immediate trigger. There was no documented incident at the competition, no known confrontation, and no clear event that would explain why the violence occurred that night in particular. Which raises a more unsettling possibility. The act may not have been impulsive. It may have been deliberate. Cases in which a parent kills their own child are rare, but they are not unheard of. In criminology, these incidents are sometimes studied under the broader category of familicide, situations where one family member kills other members of the household before often taking their own life. Research into these cases has identified several recurring patterns, though each tragedy remains deeply individual. One factor that sometimes appears is a distorted perception of ownership or control. In extreme circumstances, a parent may begin to see the child not as a separate individual, but as an extension of themselves. In that mindset, the parent believes they have the authority to decide the child's fate as well as their own. Custody conflicts can intensify those feelings. Long legal battles can create fear about losing control, anger toward an ex-partner, or a belief that the court system is taking something away from them. When those emotions combine with despair or deteriorating mental health, a person's thinking can become dangerously distorted. In some documented cases, perpetrators have described believing they were saving the child from a future they viewed as unbearable. In other cases, the act has been interpreted as a final act of revenge toward the other parent. If one person believes they are losing the battle over custody or influence, the child tragically becomes the focus of that conflict. But regardless of the motivation, the outcome is the same. A child loses the future they were supposed to have. And in Addie Smith's case, that future had barely begun. She was 11 years old. She had competitions ahead of her, friends she would grow up with, experiences she had not yet lived. None of that would happen. Because on that night in Las Vegas, her life was taken away. Back in Utah, the news began spreading through the cheer community on Sunday afternoon. At first, many people only knew that something terrible had happened. The Utah Extreme Cheer program posted a message on social media as the reality began to sink in. With the heaviest hearts, we share the devastating news that our sweet athlete Addie has passed away. We are completely heartbroken. No words do this justice. She was so beyond loved and will always be a part of the UXC family. Please keep her family in your thoughts and prayers, and continue to send them love as they navigate this unimaginable loss. The post did not explain how she had died, only that she was gone. Addie's former team, Utah Fusion All-Stars, released their own statement, remembering her as a young athlete who had been deeply loved in the gym. They spoke about her kindness, her energy, and the way she brought positivity to the team she practiced with. The Utah Cinderella Pageant organization also shared a tribute. They remembered her bright smile, her kindness, the joy she brought to the events she participated in.
An entire community is mourning. Hello, I'm Fox 13 News anchor Amy Nay, and we are here outside Utah Extreme Cheer in West Jordan, their gym that is closed today for the holiday as families and cheerleaders come back from the competition they attended in Las Vegas where this tragedy occurred. We see flowers that appear to have been left behind in tribute to young Addie, who was found dead in a hotel room at this cheer competition. I did speak with the program's director who flew back to Utah this morning. He told me it was simply too overwhelming to speak on camera, but asked us to share this statement on their behalf. It reads, "With the heaviest hearts, we share the devastating news that our sweet athlete Addie has passed away. We are completely heartbroken. No words do the situation justice. She was so beyond loved, and she will always be part of the UXC family." It goes on to ask for prayers for her family and privacy during this unimaginable loss, ending with, "Addie, we love you tremendously." Other local groups are sharing their grief. Utah Fusion All-Stars writing in part, "We are completely heartbroken, remembering her sweet smile and her light." The Utah Cinderella Pageant also posting that Addie's bright smile and kindness will never be forgotten. And the Salem Police Department also posting condolences, saying young Addie's uncle is a police officer with their department, saying they are all coming together to try to support Sergeant Smith and his family during this time. I also spoke with Addie's uncle, who created a GoFundMe page for his brother, who he says is going through unimaginable loss. He did not want to speak on camera. We understand they are trying to set up a vigil for tomorrow night. The head of Utah Extreme Cheer said they would let us know the time and the location as soon as that was set. And here at Fox 13 News, we will be sure to share that with you. Reporting in West Jordan, Amy Nay, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Across social media, other cheer teams began posting messages of condolence. Athletes who had competed alongside Addie shared photos from competitions and videos of routines they had performed together. Many people were still trying to understand what had happened. Then the details began to emerge. And when the public learned that Addie had died at the hands of her own mother, the grief shifted into something heavier. Shock, confusion, anger. People began asking the same question that surfaces in almost every tragedy like this. How could this happen? And why did no one see it coming?
For example, in her light is going to be a presence, probably in the cheer community. I know in our cheer gym for sure, but in the cheer community for a long time.
A tragedy occurred last week in Las Vegas when a Utah mother and daughter were found dead in a hotel room.
Local police are calling it a murder-suicide. The two were in town for a cheer competition. For more on this, we're chatting with Ann Emerson with Criminally Obsessed once again. Ann, thanks for staying with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is such a disturbing and sad story here. I mean, let's go over the basics. What can you talk about with us?
Well, I think we're starting to learn more. It is so heartbreaking. You know, I was a dance mom with my teenage girl, and I know how close these communities are and how devastating this must be for everyone, especially when you have such a small child involved. We had a mother-daughter that the little girl was just 11 years old. They were at a cheer competition in Vegas, which was probably just the biggest event in this young little girl's life. And they had been there, and what we understand is that they were called, a welfare check was called in the morning. The police went to go check on them. Nobody answered. But of course, they're in a hotel room in Vegas. They could have gone and gotten breakfast or coffee, whatever. They decide to leave, and they come back later in the afternoon and they discover the bodies. Yeah. And what we know is that there was a note left. So what is so disturbing is I think that this mom had been involved in a very lengthy custody battle over.
Yeah, this had been going on for a long time, and it was bitter, and they kept, I guess, altering the conditions of visitation. And I think the most recent part of it was they had alternating weeks of custody, right?
Yes, but it looks like she lost custody for a long time because it was such a nasty custody battle going on. I mean, from what I understand, once they did allow her to have custody again, that they actually said that you're going to have to, exchange those custody weeks at a school, or even have to go to the police station if school's not in session, and you have to park 5 parking spaces from each other. That's how difficult I think it shows the relationship was between the mom and dad in this situation. So it is heartbreaking that this little girl got in the middle of it.
I mean, certainly these things, I wouldn't call them common, but it's not the only case we've heard like this of custody disputes leading to tragic outcomes like this.
Not at all. And you know, it really, we've just been dealing with a case, as you know, out of Utah, where a dad has been having to track down his children that had been allegedly abducted and taken into Croatia. I was following that case for quite some time, where they've just been able to track down the mom and where the children are. You know, these custody battles are hit new levels sometimes, and this is just one of those things that it is so tragic, especially as we see the pictures of this beautiful little girl and know that she was at a place that she was so happy. And that is what I think is breaking everybody's heart. And I'm sure the cheer community where you are right now in Utah is really suffering and grieving over this loss.
Have we been able to dig deeper into the mom and maybe what was going on with her half of the problems in this marriage and the custody battle? Were there some warning signs about her?
Well, I think the biggest warning sign is that they had to take away custody to some degree from her, that she wasn't allowed to hold on to her, that whatever was being said behind closed doors between the mom and dad was so difficult that it was being called domestic abuse, according to the papers that we saw that were filed, because, you know, your sister's station, KSNV down in Las Vegas, has been looking into this since this happened in their backyard at the Rio Hotel. And it appears that this custody battle just hit a new high. Now, what has happened between 2024, when she was able to regain that custody, and now, that's what authorities really need to take a good look at. I also have heard from the reporting that's been going on the ground in Vegas that that it's believed that it was actually the father who called the welfare check, and that there was a suicide note left behind. So there is no justification, but maybe we can find out what was going through her mind a little bit more if the father chooses to divulge that. I think it could help in other situations.
All right, Ann Emerson with Criminally Obsessed, thank you for chatting with us this morning about 2 different cases. We appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ann. We'll see you later.
Important questions remain unanswered. Investigators confirmed that a note was discovered inside the hotel room, but authorities have not released its contents. It is unknown whether Tanya addressed Addie's father in the message. It is unknown whether she attempted to explain her actions, or whether she expressed any awareness of what she was about to take from her daughter. Those answers may never become public. Other questions linger as well. Were there warning signs? Did Tanya ever speak about feeling overwhelmed or hopeless during the years of legal conflict? Did anyone close to her notice changes in her behavior, mood, or routine in the weeks before the trip to Las Vegas? Had she ever sought professional help? Was she receiving mental health support during those 9 years of custody litigation? Or was the pressure building silently, unnoticed by the people around her? In cases like this, hindsight often creates a painful illusion. After a tragedy, it can feel as though the warning signs must have been obvious. But many times they were not. People hide pain. They continue daily routines. They show up to work, to practices, to events, appearing outwardly normal while privately struggling, which leads to the question that haunts families, communities, and investigators alike. Could anyone have stopped this? Could something have been done earlier that might have changed the outcome? Those questions rarely have clear answers. What remains instead is the reality of what happened, and the responsibility to examine it carefully, hoping that understanding tragedies like this might one day help prevent another one. The tragedy in Las Vegas forced many people to confront an uncomfortable question. How should society handle custody battles when conflict between parents becomes extreme? Family courts regularly deal with disagreements between separated parents. Most cases involve tension, frustration, and negotiation. But in rare situations, the hostility escalates to a level that raises deeper concerns about the emotional environment surrounding the child. In the custody dispute between Tanya McGeehan and Bradley Smith, the restrictions imposed by the court were unusually strict. Orders requiring the parents to remain separated during exchanges, prohibiting certain forms of communication, and limiting interactions at school events reflected a relationship that had broken down almost completely. When a court determines that 2 parents cannot even stand in the same parking lot during a custody exchange, it is a signal that the conflict has reached a dangerous level of intensity. And while those rules are designed to protect the adults from further confrontation, they can also reveal something troubling about the atmosphere in which a child is growing up. For Addie Smith, that atmosphere lasted nearly her entire life. From infancy through age 11, the legal dispute between her parents continued. The years that typically shape a child's sense of safety, belonging, and trust unfolded against the background of an ongoing court battle. Children living in high-conflict custody situations often experience pressures that are difficult for adults to fully see. Even when parents attempt to shield them from arguments, children can sense tension, hostility, and unresolved anger. Over time, that environment can influence how a child understands relationships, family dynamics, and emotional security. What did those years look like from Addie's perspective? No one can know for certain. But the reality is that she spent her childhood in a situation where the 2 people responsible for raising her were locked in continuous legal conflict. Despite that, she continued to attend school, participate in cheerleading, and build friendships with teammates. To many people around her, she appeared happy. But children in difficult family situations often learn to carry complicated emotions quietly. They show up to practice smiling, They perform well in school. They do everything they can to maintain a sense of normalcy. That resilience can sometimes hide the weight they are carrying. The case has also raised broader conversations about how the legal and mental health systems respond to prolonged custody disputes. Family courts are designed primarily to resolve legal questions, custody arrangements, visitation schedules, decision-making authority, and child support. But legal solutions do not always address the emotional and psychological strain that accompanies years of conflict. Many family law experts have pointed out that high-conflict custody cases often benefit from additional support systems, including mediation, counseling, and psychological evaluation when appropriate. These tools are meant to reduce hostility, encourage cooperation, and help parents focus on the long-term well-being of the child. In situations where hostility continues for years, some professionals argue that ongoing mental health support may be just as important as legal intervention. Custody battles can become emotionally exhausting. Parents may feel trapped in a cycle of court hearings, accusations, and uncertainty about the future. For some individuals, that stress can gradually lead to feelings of hopelessness or loss of control. Most people experiencing that pressure never become violent, but the strain of prolonged conflict can still damage families, erode relationships, and create lasting emotional scars for everyone involved, especially children. Cases like the one involving Tanya McGeehan and Addie Smith highlight the importance of identifying when disputes are moving beyond ordinary disagreement and entering a crisis level of hostility. Long-term patterns sometimes appear in these situations. Extended legal battles lasting many years. Court-ordered restrictions limiting normal parental interaction. Communication breakdowns that require strict legal oversight. Emotional exhaustion on all sides. None of these factors alone predicts violence. But together, they can signal a situation where families may need additional support before the conflict escalates further. In the end, the tragedy in Las Vegas left devastation across multiple lives. Addie Smith, an 11-year-old girl who loved cheerleading, lost the chance to grow up. Her father, Bradley Smith, lost his daughter. The cheerleading teams that trained and competed alongside her lost a teammate and friend. And Tanya McGeehan, the person responsible for her daughter's care, also lost her life. No one emerged from this situation with anything resembling a victory. Only loss. Stories like this are difficult to hear and difficult to tell. But they matter because they force people to confront painful realities about family conflict, mental health, and the systems meant to protect children. Understanding how tragedies develop, how years of unresolved conflict, emotional strain, and isolation can build pressure over time, can help communities recognize when families may need help long before a crisis unfolds. If someone is going through an overwhelming situation, particularly during a difficult custody dispute or other life crisis, reaching out for support can make an enormous difference. Remember Addie Smith not only for the way her life ended, but for the life she was living. A young athlete who loved cheerleading. A teammate whose smile was remembered by coaches and friends. A child with dreams, friendships, and years ahead of her that she never had the opportunity to experience. Her story now serves as a reminder of how important it is to recognize conflict before it reaches a breaking point, and to ensure that children growing up in difficult family situations are surrounded by the support and protection they deserve.